as I've elaborated upon. So there's earthly as well as galactic cosmological associations. Yes, I've said that before also. Continuing on page 206, Peterson notes Asherah was both goddess and cult symbol. She was the tree. The menorah, which was the seven-branched candlestick that stood for centuries in the Temple of Jerusalem, supplies an interesting parallel to all of this. Leon Yarden maintains that the menorah represents a stylized almond tree. He points to the notably radiant whiteness of the almond tree at certain points in its life cycle and reminds his readers of the perennial association of the tree of life with light, pointing in this context even to the burning bush from which Yahweh chose to address Moses at Sinai. It is fascinating, therefore, to see Yarden argue that the archaic Greek name of the almond, the Amygdale, reflected in its contemporary botanical designation as Amygdalis communis, almost certainly not a native Greek word, is most likely derived from the Hebrew word Emgadolah, meaning the Great Mother. The Punic Western goddess Tanit, whom Saul Olien has identified with Israelite Canaanite Asherah, the consort of the god El, the mother and the wet nurse to the gods, was depicted as a virgin and symbolized by a tree. On page 207, I'll skip here, the important Franciscan philosopher and ascetic Saint Bonaventure in the medieval ages went so far as to label Mary the spouse of the Eternal Father, an expression that would be echoed in 1399 by Christian de Pizan, who also termed Mary the Queen of Heaven. This is the exact same title given to the goddess of ancient Israel and attached her to the Trinity itself. Remember, Nephi's vision of the tree of life in the Book of Mormon goes even further, identifying Mary with the tree. And that's basically what I wanted to hint at and talk about, because this tree symbolism is so important in the Joseph Smith papyri that we have, as Hugh Nibley has elaborated, and I'll share a little bit, the ideas of the Ishid tree and so on and so forth. But this tree idea goes throughout the ancient world, from Mesoamerica to the Akkadians, to ancient Mesopotamia, to Babylon, to Israel, of course, our biblical tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life, so on and so forth. And I want to share some points of view there. William G. Dever, in his book, Did God Have a Wife?, published by William B. Eerdmans. I said earlier 2006. It was 2005. It was late 2005 this was published. He notes on page 223, the word Asherah, the term must refer either to a wooden pole, that is a stylized tree, or to a living tree, both of which are symbols of the goddess Asherah. I wanted to let you get a little flavor of William Dever. I've got a lot more from him I'll share in a little while. Now, Joseph Campbell, in his really wonderful book, The Mythic Image, this is from Princeton University Press. It's the Bollingen Series C, 1974. On page 186, he says, when the concept of a holy site or center is found joined to that of a mathematically structured universe, symbolized in the imagery of the cosmic mountain oriented to the four quarters of the zodiac. See, my comment is, all of this is hypocephalus imagery. All of it has to do with our facsimiles here. Well, anyway, a derivation, either proximate or remote from ancient Mesopotamia, must be suspected. So this goes way back into hoary antiquity. On page 190, he says, in many cases, the center is conceived of as an axis, the famous axis mundi, extending vertically to the pole star and downward to some pivotal point in the abyss. Iconographically, it may be represented as a mountain, or as a stairway, a ladder, a pole. See, here we go with our min figure again. Or very commonly, a tree. It is symbolized in our own Christmas tree, with the pivotal star at its summit, bounteous gifts appearing beneath, and the Christ child, greatest gift of them all, in the creche at its base. While below, as we may imagine, are its roots in the fiery abyss, but equally it is symbolized by the cross. The cross is the tree. And then he notes on page 192, in the Old Norse poetic Edda. This axial tree is named Yggdrasil, steed, the Drasil of Odin, Yggd, because the god Odin, that is Woden or Wotan, he hung on this tree for 9 days to gain the wisdom of the runes. At the root of Yggdrasil is a worm or a serpent as it gnaws, and on the summit perches an eagle while running up and down its trunk in an everlasting squirrel, or as there is an everlasting squirrel. There is also the idea of an inverted tree with its roots above in eternity, as described in the Indian Katha Upanishad. And Anandake Kumaraswamy has an entire chapter devoted to this inverted tree. I'll share some principles from his materials also. John of Ruysbeck, 1293 to 1381, employs such an image in writing of the spiritual efforts of the mystic. And he must climb into the tree of belief, which grows downward since it has its roots in the Godhead. Also in the chief medieval text of the Kabbalah, the Zohar, about 1280. Isn't it interesting? This 1280 era is the same era that the Arthurian legends came about and the Grail legends began to circulate, with Cretin of Troyes and those. Anyway, that's my comment. Campbell goes on, we are told of an inverted tree in the Zohar. Happy it is there declared is the portion of Israel in whom the Holy One, blessed be he, delights, and to whom he gave the Torah of truth, the tree of life. Whoever takes hold of this achieves life in this world and in the world to come. Now the tree of life extends from above downward, and it is the sun which illuminates all. And then on page 193, again in the earthly paradise of Dante's Purgatorio, on the summit of the mountain, where heaven and earth come together, as at the summit of a Mayan pyramid or of a Mesopotamian ziggurat, there was found the tree from which Adam and Eve plucked the fateful fruit, a plant, as the poet tells, despoiled of flowers and of other leafage on every bough. And on page 194, now it is of the essence of the image of the axial point or the pole that it should symbolize the way or the place of passage from motion to rest, time to eternity, separation to union, but then also, conversely, rest to motion, eternity to time, unity to multiplicity. Hence, in the biblical Eden, the imagery is of two trees, the tree of life, also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, lest they should take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever, Genesis 3:22. And Yahweh, moreover, after their expulsion, placed at the east of the Garden of Eden the cherubim and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So this is this idea of the... Now, why did I had a question that I wanted to present. Odin hung on Yggdrasil for 9 days. Now, why is that? The number 9.
And so I reached the end of my next podcast. This idea of the number 9 I explore in the next podcast, the significance with our Hypocephalus, I believe in very remarkable ways. So thank you for joining me in this Backyard Professor podcast series. Hope you enjoy them. I'll see you next time on the podcasts. Have a great life.